So thank you very much for attending today to learn more about the process for institutional nomination for the Rhodes and Marshall Scholarships. We're very excited that you came. Let's do a few introductions. We have 3 advisors in the office that spend a good bit of their time supporting and advising on the Rhodes and the Marshall or the UK scholarships. So I am Lauren Tuckley. I'm the director of the Center for Research and Fellowships. I have some fun facts that I would like to share with you. I'm from Texas, so can I get some hands from people or like raise something or clap something if you're from Texas, just so I feel like I have solidarity within my audience would be great. Nobody. Maybe we don't know where the buttons are, that's fine too. We had one last night with 80 people and that's like really disappointing. I feel like we gotta have more Texans out there, that's fine, it's fine. I think this is a little bit outdated. I probably have played 20 or 30 more matches since I added this. Fun fact, but I got an account on chess.com and I feel like I have a problem now. In 1 year, I've played, like 3,100, now probably 87 rapid chess matches. I really, really, really like to spend most of my time doing that. I need to disable the app at this point. By day, I'm helping undergrads identify ways to, have a postgraduate experience that meaningfully prepares them to make a difference in the world. And by night, I'm doing the same thing, but for a troop of 6-year-old daisies. So they're getting the full CRF experience at 6. It's very fun. My academic background, I have a PhD in English with a focus in the subfield of rhetoric and composition. And within that, I like to do research on what we call hidden genres, or the things that people have to write all the time, like personal statements and letters of recommendation. But we don't know a lot about the rhetorical, text-based, or linguistic features of those things because they're confidential. So it becomes hard for people without prior exposure to those genres to learn them. So I do research on that. I'm going to turn it over to Colleen, who's with us.
Hi, all. I jumped on just to say hello and introduce myself. I'm Colleen. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an assistant director with the Center for Research and Fellowships. I'm from New Jersey. Any Jersey folks on the call?
Half the hands get raised, probably.
Any hands? Oh, man. Nothing?
One.
Man. I got nothing. Oh, nope. Got it.
You've got Daniel 2 Bredlow. People.
How are you doing, Daniel? And Sebastian? Wonderful. Great. Now, I may disappoint some of you. I am from the Taylor-Ham part of New Jersey, and it is Taylor-Ham. If you know, you know. Michael just gave me a look. But anyway, so a couple of things about me. Despite the fact that I am in no way athletically inclined, my fun facts started to become very sports oriented as I was like trying to think of things to include here. One of the things that I kind of do in my free time to just give myself a little bit of time and space is play bocce once a week with a bunch of my friends. It's honestly for those of you who are maybe graduating or recent graduates probably understand this quite a bit. Finding time to meet up with your friends who are all also working in fields that require a lot of our time and energy, but we do it because we love it. We have to like schedule time to see each other, which is why I play bocce once a week with those folks. So otherwise, I don't think I'd see them, despite the fact that we all live in like a 5-mile radius of each other. I also am a former roller derby player. If anyone's ever heard of or experienced roller derby, it's a lot of fun. If you ever want to learn more about contact sports on roller skates, you can come and chat with me. Unfortunately, my short-lived roller derby career was ended in January of 2020 when I broke my ankle. So I really kicked 2020 off well. But another thing that I also kind of like to do and enjoy in my free time, like these are kind of the things that I use to express my creativity a little bit, is cooking, especially. So in our last year's Michael's sort of cohort of Rhodes and Marshall scholars, we had a lot of folks that enjoyed cooking and baking, and so if that's something that you enjoy, you'll find camaraderie here at the CRF.
Yeah, not a requirement for nomination, but definitely a bonus. So Jonathan Campo is not here with us in this presentation, but he's also a UK Fellowships Advisor here in the office. And I think everything you need to know about him can be summarized in the fact that he loves Scotland for a number of reasons. So if you were interested in potentially proposing a program in Scotland, he's your go-to. If you don't know where you would like to propose a program as you're thinking about applying for a UK fellowship, he will try to convince you that Scotland is the place to go. With that, I will turn it over to our applicant, now Marshall Scholar, our recipient, to introduce himself.
I would also add that Jonathan is a vegan and has very interesting criteria for his veganism that my group spent a lot of time discussing with him. Like, I think mussels are allowed to be eaten in Jonathan's world because they're somehow less sentient. But don't quote me on that because Jonathan's not here to defend himself.
That's his definition.
Okay. So hi everybody, Michael Lundgren here, Marshall Scholar. I think that's actually the first time I've introduced myself as such, which is exciting. Headed to Oxford next year studying education and child development, and then hopefully in my second year getting a degree in public policy. I'm an Oregonian, I'm from Oregon. I doubt there's anybody from Oregon on here, but if there is, please announce yourself. We're the best, clearly. Yeah, thank you. What else? Let's see. Oh, I'm a twin, which is always a fun fact. My twin sister Whitney is 6 minutes older than me and cares about that a lot. I am training for a triathlon right now. That's my like summer challenge for myself, which is kind of fun. And what's another good fun fact? Oh, a fun fact I always have is that I once met Malia Obama on Ash Wednesday with a giant like smudge cross on my face and had a full-on conversation with her and had no idea who she was. But I did figure out before it was announced in People magazine that she was going to University of Michigan. So that was a kind of a fun interaction, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michael. All right, I just want to spend a minute first defining what fellowships are. There could be some of you here today that have heard that term. It might mean a lot of different things, but in understanding what a fellowship is and what it does helps you understand what the Rhodes and Marshall are attempting to do. And I think it's really important to start there. So first and foremost, all fellowships, the center that we work at and for is a center that's designed to support students in developing co-curricular academic skill sets through a variety of experiences. Helping and advising students apply for fellowships is one of those core functions. A fellowship is something, an opportunity to do something. It provides continued academic development, often through a graduate degree program. Sometimes it funds research. Sometimes fellowships offer cross-cultural experiences, but all of those opportunities are kind of tied to a foundational mission based on the organization that provides students or applicants with these opportunities. So no matter what, all fellowships and all fellowships that we advise on, those opportunities are driven by a mission that seeks to enable young people to develop the skills that they need to make a social impact. Fellowships also, a common thread, common denominator, fellowships also provide a scholar community. So there's opportunities to take that graduate degree programming, to do research, or to have a cross-cultural experience with a community of peers who are doing that fellowship alongside you, right? A fellowship also provides a credential. It is an important signal of achievement. Fellowships are merit-based, so on that basis, they can confer some sort of success to external parties or audiences. And then lastly, one of the most important elements of a fellowship is the alumni network. There are oftentimes many scholars that preceded you, and there were many scholars that will follow you. And that network of individuals becomes friends, future colleagues, mentors, people that you can turn to. And I think offer one of the most important reasons why you might consider both the Rhodes and the Marshall. Let's go the other way. I want to also, before we get into the nitty-gritty of like what's nomination and how do we do that, emphasize the importance and explicate for you how the office does this work. So essentially, fellowships are competitive. A lot of people apply, a few are selected. If the center spent all its time focusing on how to win or how to get that outcome of success by, indicating selection for a fellowship, then we lose the opportunity to support so many that apply. So because of that, everything that this office does, from advising you now at the stage where you're interested in learning more about these scholarships and the process of nomination, to being selected for nomination, going through the development process to kind of finalize your external application, and then going through the process of training for interviews, and even after receiving the award, what to make of yourself and your life and your next steps afterwards. We think about how are all of those engagements or the touch points that you have with us something that we hope you can do that will allow you to develop a subset of skills that you can use for something else. So we really care about pedagogically imagining the process and supporting and mentoring your development. And that holds consistent across all of our programs. So we do things that help you reflect, that help you understand how to articulate your interests, that help you find communities where you can thrive in pursuing your goals. And then we have, engagements with you as not someone that's telling you how to like game your application or here's how you like put forward the best essay, but we mentor your development and your thinking. So for us, the fellowship is a language and a vehicle that allows us to help you figure out what you want to do after you leave Georgetown and the kind of difference that you want to make. Michael, I'll turn it to you, and I would like to hear a little bit from you about why you decided to apply for fellowships.
Yeah, before I answer that question, I just want to underscore the points that Lauren made in the last slide, particularly about like that mentorship aspect. I've often said to Lauren that she is the best thought partner for me and the best guide in all of my endeavors in life. And that's like something that I would not have gotten had I not put myself forward for this and tried and seen what happened. And like the fact that I'm here is largely due to Lauren and Jonathan and all the people at the CRF. So just know this is an incredible opportunity, win or lose. So I decided to apply for these fellowships because I kind of had a vision and an idea of what I wanted to do in the world, but that very much required further academic training. I had done a lot of work in early childhood policy and had an experience where I just kind of found myself in the room working with childcare providers, and I knew that that was where I wanted to be and that that was the right place for me. But in order to really develop as a leader, I would need to A, get training in education and child development because I didn't have that academic background, and then B, sort of develop a framework for thinking about policy and policy development and the role of politics in that that I could get through sort of an MPP type degree. And so that was very much like the initial impetus for my decision to apply for these fellowships. Just kind of feeling like I had an idea, but a missing piece.
Also, thank you for your kind words, Michael. So I keep going backwards. I'm sorry. I think my cursor is set the other way. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the facts of the matter. You'll hear us say things like the Rhodes, the Marshall, the UK fellowships, in part because there's a suite of opportunities that send you to do graduate study in the UK at various institutions there that require what's called institutional nomination. I'll get to that in a second. I do want to just make mention briefly that in prior information sessions or in communicating information about the UK fellowships, we often included a program called the Mitchell Program, which funded students to pursue graduate study in Ireland. We were notified a couple of weeks ago that the Mitchell Program for the next year has been suspended. So if you had been interested in that and are wondering why it's not here, the fact of the matter is they won't be selecting a class, the next scholar class. So we'll be exclusively today talking about Rhodes and Marshall, and we will also, at the end, I'll point you in the direction of other fellowships that also support graduate study in the UK that you can learn more about. So we're going to focus on these two, but there are also other ones that as you think about applying, you should put your you should at least consider applying for multiple. If you are interested and qualify for both the Rhodes and the Marshall Scholarship, you can apply for nomination and receive nomination for both and put external applications forward for both. You don't have to choose one or the other. Indeed, most of the individuals that apply for nomination are applying for both Rhodes and Marshall Scholarship nomination. The Rhodes Scholarship funds 2 years of graduate study at Oxford University. So any graduate degree program at Oxford is what the Rhodes Scholarship will support you to do. It is interested in those that want to use their education at Oxford to make a difference in the world. Again, I highlight the way that mission works in all of these. It is an important component when thinking about crafting your application materials. There are different constituencies with the Rhodes. What does that mean? So the Rhodes Scholarship has an allotment of scholarships, upwards of 100 or so, that are segmented across different constituencies around the world. The United States has 32 scholarships in their allotment. So across 16 districts, so 2 scholarships per district. Districts are based on your home residence. Two are selected each year, making up the 32 of the US class. Anyone here that's not a US citizen can still apply for a Rhodes Scholarship, but you would be applying in your country of citizenship. If in those instances there is not a constituency assigned to your country, so there's not a constituency for every country, then after the United States, there are geographic regions. If you don't have a constituency that is predefined, there is a global scholarship where anyone that doesn't have a quote unquote home constituency can apply in the global category. If you have questions about what constituency to apply in or any questions about your eligibility, please feel free to write us. We can advise you. There are a lot of technical rules related to eligibility, and we want to make sure that you're clear on where you can apply and if you can apply. I say if because in addition to applying in the right constituency, you must also meet an age qualification. You cannot have turned 24 by the time you would matriculate at Oxford. That means if you're applying for nomination now, you would begin graduate study in approximately September of 2025. By that time, you cannot have turned 24. There are a few exclusionary or extraordinary provisions that still allow you to apply if you're a little bit older, 1 or 2 years older, if you had a gap year, or if there are a few qualifying events that allow for further consideration if you don't meet that cutoff. Again, reach out to us if you think you might have cause for being considered, so that before you even go through the whole process, we're clear on your eligibility and where you're applying. The US constituency requires institutional nomination. I'll get to that again in a second. There are those constituencies around the globe that do not require institutional endorsement. In that instance, you are free and able to apply, and you don't need conferral for the availability to apply through your undergraduate institution. In those instances, if you would like to receive access to the support of this office through advising and being a part of the cohort nominee process, even if you are not required to seek nomination, if you want to get in on the advising that we do, that's pretty structured, our structured programming, you still need to apply for nomination so you can join the cohort development program. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. So if the Rhodes is funding graduate study at Oxford, the Marshall is funding graduate study at almost any accredited institution in the UK that offers graduate degree programs. They are in most cases providing you with 2 years of academic development. It is not uncommon in the UK or in Europe for graduate degree programs to last a year. In these instances, a cool thing about the Marshall is that you have the opportunity to do 2 masters, one back-to-back at different institutions. So you can, and Michael will talk a little bit later on about, you heard him talk about where he's proposing to go and what he's going to do. You'll see how you can have two very different academic years at different institutions doing different degree programs. Now, institutional endorsement is required for the Marshall. There are a little bit more flexible opportunities through the Marshall, but when it comes to eligibility, there are a few more constraints. So what I mean by that is, if you're an international student, you are not eligible to apply, given that the Marshall is the United Kingdom's memorial to the United States, the thank you for the Marshall Plan. And it is one of the ways that they achieve the cross-cultural development and fulfill their commitment to soft diplomacy with the United States. So in addition to, and that's what makes the Marshall distinct from the Rhodes, in addition to funding your graduate study at any institution in the UK, you do become an unofficial ambassador, and you are taking part in a cross-cultural exchange opportunity where you're kind of representing the United States in your capacity as a student in the UK. The Foreign Office in the UK is the entity that oversees, funds, and sets the eligibility and selection criteria for this award.
Lauren,
Yes, I will stop.
can I
Yes,
jump in here quickly?
yes.
One thing I wanted to call out, you saw in the criteria category, some GPA markers. So when I was in your position last year, I looked at that and I said, well, I think I have a GPA that's sufficient for Marshall, but I don't think I have one that's sufficient for Rhodes. And so therefore I'm not going to apply to Rhodes. I went to an advising session with Jonathan. Jonathan said, you should just do it. Why not? Like, do Rhodes and do Marshall. Turns out I ended up being a finalist for both. So just because your GPA might not measure up to that like 3.9 plus typical for Rhodes, doesn't mean that if you don't like put in a lot of work on your essays and get really good recommendations and have a great resume that you're not, a solid candidate for Rhodes. You can still be a solid candidate and not have every single piece of the perfect puzzle.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much, Michael. And I think that really highlights the importance of, if you are interested in studying in the UK and you see the way that further graduate study might help you advance some goals that ultimately help you get in a career where you want to make a difference in some way, right? Then come into an advising session and let us look at kind of the holistic, let us help advise you from a holistic standpoint so that we can help kind of like you interpret or contextualize those GPA markers. There's a strict 3.7 cutoff for the Marshall that has absolutely no flexibility, but absolutely, as Michael said, the last few Rhodes Scholars, we've had those that have been in the 3.9 plus category. We've also had in recent history scholars who have been in the 3.8s. And certainly we have had many individuals become finalists at those GPA levels in the 3.8s as well. So thank you for like highlighting that. I'm going to just move past the evaluating fit because I think if you're here, if you are interested in graduate study in the UK, if you want to figure out how you can use your education to make a difference in the world, then there are ways that we can help you identify which of these you may be competitive for, how to think about improving your competitiveness in even those things that you can't see. But at the end of the day, there are ways that there are basic eligibility criteria. There's a rationale that we help you develop through the process of applying. And there are ways that, how are you thinking about your leadership of service experience in narrating what you want to do? So that vision piece becomes really important. If you have questions about fit, again, this is the time to seek out advising now. And Michael, why were the UK fellowships a good fit for your goals?
Well, I think this is a question that I didn't necessarily know the answer to right at the beginning of the nomination process. But as I researched and learned more about study in the UK and the potential programs that were available to me, that brought me to a greater understanding of how these fellowships were a good fit for my goals. I found a great program at Oxford that's, unique in the world, really, in focusing on education and child development. There's really no equivalent in the US at our education schools. They all kind of teach education broadly, and you could take 1 or 2 classes on child development. But I found a program that focused on exactly what I wanted to study. Um, and then I think as I learned more about the UK and childcare policy in the UK, I began to see how learning from uh, their policy environment could be incredibly instructive for the work that I wanted to do in the US, and began to sort of draw those connections for myself and understand that this could be a really good opportunity for me in terms of my own professional goals.
Yeah, I think that's so important to highlight too. It's been my advising experience as well that there's either one of two things that happen when someone's thinking about applying for these. It's number one, you're like, um, I know I kind of want to do graduate study and I know kind of things that I have interest in and areas where I put my time and energy, but I don't know how all that fits together. I'm not quite sure like how to articulate a vision for all those things that, like, you're kind of almost called to do. And through the process of applying, through going through nomination, um, receiving the support and guidance, the mentorship that we hope to be able to provide you, that becomes a little bit more legible, right? Or you define it kind of as you start making decisions about what it is you really want to do and what kind of change you really want to have or see in the world, right? The second version is the person that comes in, I've got all the goals, here's what I want to do, here's how I want to do it, let's go, and applying. And in that case, what often happens is through the process of applying, those goals change and develop. They either become more refined, sometimes they pivot into different fields that they couldn't have anticipated. So there's one thing to take away that I think is really enormously helpful that Michael addresses, is the idea that as you apply, you're forming the candidacy. This isn't something where you're like, oh, should I apply because I have a ready-made candidacy? Let's go. This is, do you want to embark on a process of development that works on a candidacy that you will define and redefine over the course of many weeks? So you hear this word endorsement. Essentially, fellowships that require institutional nomination or endorsement, those are, I use those interchangeably, they mean the same thing, mean that the university, your undergraduate institution, must run a pre-selection, identification, evaluation, and selection process that from all those that are interested in applying, identify and endorse a subset that are of good fit for the program. So that means you must apply to the office first. And the office, when I say apply to the office, I mean you work with us to put forward an application that's read by a review committee of alumni from these programs and faculty. So this isn't the staff here sitting on the selection committee. You're not applying to me or to Colleen or to Jonathan. We're helping you develop your application. We send all those applications out for external review. The external evaluators, based on the criteria of the Rhodes and the Marshall, will review, evaluate, score your application, and from that subset, those that have the highest scores are the best fit for the program, are then offered nomination. If you accept nomination, we then expect that you will participate in what we call the CRF Candidacy Development Program. We form a community of applicants that work on their applications together. And through that process, we help you finalize your application materials, which come due to the external, the foundation, to the scholarship committees, for the Marshall at the end of September annually, and for the Rhodes the first Wednesday in October. So right now, you're thinking about applying for endorsement for the Rhodes or Marshall scholarship applications that will become due by May 1st at noon for a month that typically goes out to a review committee. For those that receive nomination, you will take part in the Candidacy Development Program, which begins on June 1st. Throughout the summer, you spend time working on your written materials. We then submit your application to those review boards with a letter of institutional nomination that confers endorsement onto your application. The scholarship boards, so the Rhodes and the Marshall selection committees, will offer final interviews and select nominees in November. And again, if you're applying for nomination by May 1, you're looking to begin graduate study in the UK in the fall of 25. So what's involved in the internal nomination application? We require, and this is a key element, we require attendance at the application development seminars. That's on the next slide, kind of a spelling out of what those are. But there are 4 or 5 different workshops that we need you to either attend or to view asynchronously. They're all recorded if you can't attend in real time, that take you through a few really important things that you need to know about submitting the strongest possible nomination application. In addition to attendance at those throughout the month of April, you will submit an application form which is basic biographical details and your program selection. So when you're thinking about applying for a Rhodes, you're thinking about applying for a Marshall, one of the things that is required is the identification of programs that you would be asking the Rhodes or the Marshall Scholarship to support. So you'd have to have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do with your scholarship, what programs you're asking for them to fund. We ask that you put together a multimedia video. Essentially, we call this a candidacy pitch. It's a 5 or 6 minute video that takes us through why you're applying, what programs you hope to pursue, what you want to do. And we require this in lieu of any sort of written essays. There are no essays to write. We're asking that you develop a slide deck, a voiceover slide deck, a candidacy pitch, and that's essentially what becomes the package, or sort of the primary focal point of your application package is your pitch. You have your program selection, you have attended the seminars, you have submitted a resume and a transcript, and then finally, in that application package are letters of recommendation. These are full letters. They aren't who would recommend you if you get nomination for the external competition way down the line. They are full letters of recommendation from those in your support system, your academic mentors, instructors you've had in various classes. You'll see that the Rhodes requires 8 letters of recommendation. So for nomination, if you're interested in applying for the Rhodes, you will need a minimum of 8 letters. We allow you and encourage you, if you have more recommenders than 8, to submit as many as you would like the office to review for considering you for nomination. Now, that sounds and can sound really daunting, 8 letters of recommendation, but for the Rhodes is very interested in those that have done a lot of things in many places. They require 4 academic letters and 4 what they call sort of non-academic letters. So this would also be letters from internship supervisors, maybe research supervisors, individuals who've seen you operate in, service capacities in addition to the academic letters. The Marshall, we require for nomination 4 letters, even though to submit your final application only requires the submission of 3. We ask for 4 because oftentimes if you are applying for one of these, you are you've done things that would permit you the opportunity to have more than 4. We ask you to submit as many letters as possible so that we can help advise you. So for example, while you're only required to submit 3 at the time of nomination, at the time of external application submission, at the time of nomination, we'd like to see 4. That way we can help advise you potentially which 3, if you receive nomination, would be the best. So we ask for a little bit more at nomination so we can see the field by which we can help you assemble the strongest application. That's the same reason why we don't limit the number of recs that you could have submitted. If you have 8, 9, 10, 11, have them all submitted. That way we can see the full range of possibility for what that external application could be. All of that will be required by May 1st. And we have these application development seminars because a lot goes into how to think about recommendation letters, who to ask, what to tell them, what they should be saying in their letter for you. Do I need 2 because I'm applying from one person because I'm applying for the Rhodes and the Marshall? The answer is no, but a lot of those questions will be addressed in the seminar on the 4th. We have a seminar on defining your issue area, on navigating the complexity of graduate study in the United Kingdom, which is different, very different from graduate study in the United States. So we want to take you through how to think about that, how to identify programs that might be a best fit for you. And then we have a nomination video, how to make it and what goes in it. So you don't have to attend those in real time, but in order to put forward a strong application, and then in order to be eligible to apply for nomination, you must receive this content. We have other things that we'll provide you to that help you do some of that work. There's a list of handouts that we have, resources, all of that kind of stuff also comes out to you on the listserv. So ensure that you're checking your email on a routine basis. We send out an email message every Monday morning. If you're a listserv subscriber, you should have received an email this past Monday. Again, I just wanted to have a whole slide dedicated to this so that we're all on the same page. All of that information, all of those activities, attending the workshops, putting together the video, getting the recommendations in, all of that has to be submitted by May 1st, this coming May 1st, by noon. Okay, after that, what happens? So you submitted your application, excellent. Then it goes to that external review board that I had just spoke about. They review them, score them, rank them. If you're among those that are selected for nomination, we will give you a nomination offer. You have the opportunity to think about whether or not you want to accept the offer. And I say accept that because we take very seriously what's required after nomination. So after nomination, the work becomes even more intense. So if it's an intense, and I don't want to scare you off from applying, because I do believe we do this in a way that helps you really get a lot out of it, even if you like don't end up at the finality of Rhodes or a Marshall Scholar. So I do think that anybody could find value in even applying for nomination in terms of like thinking, how do I distill all the experiences I've had into a core message that's informed by values I have, change I want to see in the world, and offers a pathway to making that happen. I think that's important for any student or young alumni to be able to go through that discernment process, and we help you do that, okay? But after that, the work continues. Nomination offers would go out the week of May 20th. Sometime in the last week of May, we would get our nominees together for a nominee orientation, and we would form what's called pods. In a second, I'm going to let Michael talk to you about what a pod is, because I think it's easier to explain when you've gone through the process than for me to kind of tell you what it is. But essentially, it's a group of nominees that are going to do all the things that you're going to have to do with you. I think it's really important to do this work in community. Georgetown University is the only that I am aware of, and I know about a lot of universities that do this, the only nominating kind of university that does this as a group. Like, you're not going through this alone. Your competitor is not the other Georgetown student that you're working with. One of the things that I often tell students, applicants, nominees, young alumni that go into our candidacy development program is that you cannot be a Rhodes or a Marshall Scholarship until you can see it and believe it in your peer. And once you can see it and believe it in them, and they see it and believe it in you, everybody has a better shot. And that's the only way anybody can achieve the outcome of being selected. So I really feel like if you are down for like trying to figure out what life looks like in the short run, maybe I know we have a lot of alumni here today. Maybe you've kind of come out more recently and you're like, what does the next 5 years look like? What do the next 10 and 20 years look like? If you're a senior thinking about like, what do I even make of life after Georgetown? We hope the nomination process can help you do that. And we hope that you can do that with a peer that you become like invested in as well. So like friendships and all sorts of exciting things come out of a process that's about community and development, all right? There's a ton of stuff that we do in the candidacy development program. If you're offered nomination, you'll get a lot more details about what those expectations are. For those of you on the call today that are like clearly on the call because you can't be in Washington, D.C., all of this can be done from afar. If you notice here, the computer that's facing in this picture, the computer screen that's projecting a couple of images of smiling faces are two people in a 4-person pod, because essentially half of them were oftentimes not able to be in person. I think my next slide is, okay, Michael, I'll turn it over to you now. What did you get out of the development program? Anything you want to offer there? I'm very sorry.
No, that's a great segue, because that the top half of that Zoom screen is me. I did the whole process virtually from Oregon. So for those of you worried about whether or not that's feasible, doable, it is. What did I get out of the candidacy development program? I feel like that is such a loaded question with many different avenues to answer it. First off, those people on that previous slide in that picture, that's my writing pod. And they quickly became some of my closest friends and greatest allies through this whole process. We doing this kind of fellowship application is an incredibly like courageous, vulnerable process that requires you to kind of spill every single part of yourself out there on the table and then try to assemble something that would make a competitive fellowship application. And I think that like my group very quickly saw that if we were going to be successful, then we needed to be open and vulnerable with each other, honest with each other. Adrian in that back right corner became legendary in our group for his like very blunt, straightforward assessments of your writing that were always correct, but always like very well intentioned. I think what was one like Adrian at one point was like, yeah, that's just bad. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That is bad. I shouldn't write like that. But yeah, I think like through the candidacy development program, the pod aspect is really important because you meet weekly. You always have to bring a piece of writing. There is usually a prompt, like this week we're going to focus on the personal statement or the academic statement, but you don't always follow that. For example, I had a serious case of writer's block at the start of the candidacy development program. The day that we were supposed to bring our personal statements, I just had like an outline. And then the next class, all I had was like 2 paragraphs that I had just free written based on what I was feeling in the moment. And those 2 paragraphs actually became a part of my final essay. But everybody has a different writing process. Lauren and Jonathan are very good at sort of discerning what's going to work best for you. And then your pod becomes in addition to the feedback that you get from Lauren and Jonathan throughout the process, they're like your immediate source of feedback. I think I read at least 5 different final drafts, potential final drafts of Adrian's essays, a few of Kumi's, many of Kate's. Like we just sort of circulated writing constantly in our group chat. And that like really strengthened the final products that we were able to produce. I would not have had nearly as strong of an application if I didn't have a learning community of thought partners surrounding me who got to know me, who understood who I was and how I wrote, and who saw in me things I often didn't see in myself. So I mean, it's an invaluable process, I think. And like I now consider these guys and Lauren and Jonathan and Clean to be friends, and colleagues as well, but like friends, people who I have told my entire life story to and trust and love endlessly. And I think that like that's the intangible component of Georgetown's process, is that you learn about yourself as a person, you learn about other people, you build lifelong lasting relationships, and then sometimes you're lucky enough to win one of these incredible scholarships. But through that process, you really like build an incredible community that's very supportive and helpful in clarifying so many different aspects of your life.
Thank you. Okay, so here are, and I think it's really just important to highlight the paradox of when you get beyond the winning and get invested in your development and care for other people's development, everyone boats, like the tide lifts all the boats, right? Last year we had 3 Rhodes winners, 5 Marshall winners, a Gates Cambridge winner, 2 Schwartzman winners, and those are just sort of the big brand nationally competitive fellowships. We use similar elements and attributes of this model in the Fulbright program. Georgetown University is the leader of the Fulbright Scholar recipients, ahead of all the Ivies. there is no institution that produces more Fulbright scholars each year than Georgetown. Again, we hope that applications that are designed to help identify people that want to make a difference, well, we hope that we're finding people that want to make a difference and putting those people forward and helping you do that, right? And if you get the fellowship or not, you're going to do something great. So like so much of the time you'll come into a session and I'm going to be like, statistically, look at it, you're not going to win. Statistically, you're not going to get the interview or receive the scholarship. That's just the way it works. There's a lot more people that want these than there are opportunities to pursue them. But in doing that, I think that we have had a system that can produce winners for everybody, right? And I hate to say the word winners because I do think everyone comes out of this with something. You're not just writing in a vacuum to demonstrate you know something for a professor. When I ask you to do a writing assignment for the week, I'm asking for you to invest in yourself and talk about what you want to do to someone who doesn't know or have the language of the things that you know and have the language for, right? How to do that persuasively. Those are fungible skills that you can take into a cover letter, to a grad school application, into interviews in other circumstances. Like that's the kind of thing that we're hoping to offer you so that if it doesn't work out, when statistically it most likely won't, that you will get to the end of it and be like, I'm so happy I did this. And we have exit interviews that we have compiled, looked at the data, and the data informs the anecdote that we continue to encounter time after time. And it's later on, it's the email that comes through that's like, as did a couple of weeks ago, one of our nominees who did not receive an interview, who did not get selected, who went through this entire process is like, hey, I got into Oxford with funding because I used all of those things that we worked on while I was doing this. And they're going to be at Oxford too. Later, I'll tell you who that is, Michael. Right. So it's like, there's, I think, a benefit if you can get outside of the idea that you're just applying for the prestige or the win or whatever, you can really get serious about what you want to do and how to articulate that, then you can do some really cool things and have the best shot at finding success, whether that's through a fellowship or something else. So this is our last question, and then we'll open it up to just questions that you guys have for Michael. I want to make sure we reserve some time for that. But Michael, maybe just give us a highlight of your postgraduate plans now that they've kind of heard the language of the fellowships, and then anything that you want to offer that I didn't cover that you think is important, and then we can just open the floor for questions for you.
Yeah, so my postgraduate plans are by no means like concretely defined in terms of I want this job at this organization, but my general plan is that I want to get involved in sort of the nonprofit policy and advocacy space, working on building policy infrastructure that supports child development and early childhood education in the United States. That is through a long process of talking to a lot of people in my network, reading widely, trying to understand how change happens. That's an articulation that I've developed for myself, that if what I want to see in the world, which is, a comprehensive childcare system in the United States that supports healthy child development, the way that I think I can most effectively contribute to that becoming a reality is by engaging on the advocacy side and building power and developing policy, and then hopefully like translating that into results at some point in my lifetime, or at least helping get it closer to the finish line. Two other points I want to make. One, letters of recommendation. Do not underestimate their importance. They are oftentimes the most important piece of your application because you can make yourself look as brilliant and wonderful as possible because we are all talented Georgetown students who have proven that we are capable of that. But your letters of recommendation will like validate what you're saying about yourself, and then in the best case, dig deeper and provide committees with an even greater sense of who you are that maybe you don't even realize. I asked 11 people for letters during the nomination process. I got 10. Amongst those 10 were people who I asked who I hadn't talked to in like a year and a half, but who still remembered me. And I thought that they would say no, but they were incredibly eager and excited to contribute. So be really strategic about who you choose, and don't make those choices just based off of like the the perceived prestige of the recommender. Like one of the people that I had write a recommendation for me was the lead teacher in the early childhood classroom that I worked in. Someone who does not have a degree from a prestigious academic institution like Georgetown or Oxford, but who knew me as a person and knew how I operated in the classroom working with children. And that was like a core component of my application. And so that person's letter needed to be part of my application, even though, you know, you wouldn't immediately say like, oh, wow, that person is like such an incredible human being because they have changed the world. Like they changed the world in my classroom and they needed to be part of my telling my story. So that's important to think about. I feel like there was one more thing, maybe. Letters of recommendation. Yeah, I think that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, let me do this. Okay, we're at this part. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Michael. I'll stop the recording now. Oh, well, hold on, stop the share. I'll stop the recording.